Hello and welcome to In the Cards, Tarot Talk and Other Magical Musings. I am Xia Hunt, illustrator of the Mythic and Magical and creator of many tarot decks, including the Children of Litha Tarot, the Children of Ostara Tarot, and the Nameless One, a tarot and oracle deck. Here I will be sharing my musings on the tarot I create, such as the meanings of each card, the symbolism used to convey those meanings, as well as their astrological, numerological, natural, and mythological correspondences, among many other things. These episodes, as well as their transcripts, will be posted first to my Patreon and made available after on YouTube. This first episode, Spring's Fool, the Fool card in the Children of Ostara Tarot. I hope you enjoy. It has been a long while since I have had an active Patreon account, and much has changed since the time of my first attempt to be seen on that platform. Back then, I felt overwhelmed and uncomfortable with concepts of consistency and routine. More than that, I was unsure of my worth. Who was I to ask for cold hard cash in exchange for my stories, my art, my thoughts, my words? I was still hard at work on my first tarot deck, the Children of Litha, and thus had only begun to take my first steps towards joining the many conversations of the great mysteries. I was so green to the game, and thus disinclined to broadcast my presence. Instead, I much preferred to be a wallflower growing just outside the peripheral vision of my more seasoned and magical peers. In many ways, I still feel that way. I have learned so much since taking those first feeble steps, and yet the stubborn chafing of my ignorance up against the vastness of all the knowledge still unknown to me continues, on occasion, to cause me great pain. But, as I have said before, much has changed. I have since found a soothing balm that helps me ease that pain, and I have come by it through learning to accept the fool within me. I will never know all there is to know. None of us will. And that's okay. More than okay, it is a truth. Ignorance is a reality we must all contend with on some level at some point. True, the limitations of our understanding are rife breeding grounds for the potential of embarrassment. The silence of a question asked for which one has no answer is the stuff of stress dreams and night terrors. In a very real and pervasive way, the unknown, in almost all of its manifestations, has had a long reputation for being scary, if not downright terrifying. But the unknown can also be fun and exciting. How glorious it is to be set adrift in a world so filled with wonder and wisdom that the wellspring of those virtues shall never run dry. It is thrilling to be a seeker on a journey with no end. The call of the unknown can indeed be scary. It can also be tempting. More importantly, the insecurity of ignorance must not stop us from contributing to the conversations that matter most to us. We all have so much to learn and teach and share and celebrate. We all have room to grow, and every journey must begin somewhere. And so it is that I begin here again. I am ready now to take that leap of faith, and I invite you all to take it with me. The illustration attached to this musing is of the Fool card from my most recent tarot deck, the Children of Ostara. At the time that I am writing this, Kickstarter has just recently helped me fund this deck's creation, and it is currently in production. Also, as of this moment, I am very much behind in showing my peers on Patreon just what I have been cultivating in my rather long absence. It seemed as fitting a place as any that I should begin filling in that chasm of content with some thoughts on the Fool. The Children of Ostara combines the botanical world with the world of man. It is meant to highlight the relationships between us and the flora that decorate our world. The plant corresponding to the Fool's card is the dandelion. Regarded as a common weed by most, the humble dandelion nevertheless possesses enormous medicinal and medical properties, to those who know its secrets. Speaking of secrets, you may have noticed the white serpent twining around the dandelion nymph's legs. Here's a bit of a tangent, but it does relate back to the Fool, so please bear with me. Fewer creatures have been steeped in as much symbolism as the serpent. Interestingly enough, what serpents and snakes represent is deeply influenced by cultural interpretation. In many Abrahamic traditions, but especially in Christianity, the serpent has come to represent temptation, sin, evil, and vice. This is largely due to the influence of the infamous serpent in the Garden of Eden, who tempted Eve to partake of the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil against the will of God. Yes, all right, we know where this is going. The fall and corruption of man, the exile from Eden, and the beginning of the patriarchal assumption of the inherent incompetence and sinfulness of women, right? I wonder. What was it that tempted Eve again? Do not say it was the apple. The apple is a symbol. It was not a lust for serpents or apples that tempted Eve, but a lust for knowledge. Juicy, forbidden, unknown knowledge. I have argued in the past that the specific knowledge the apple represented may be, among other things, that of agriculture. That is to say, the knowledge of plant and animal husbandry, which are in many ways the building blocks of human civilization as we know it. Indeed, although I regrettably cannot recall the original source, I have heard Eve referred to as the mother of civilization on multiple occasions. If the Garden of Eden represented a sacred place or time wherein God tended to the needs of all of creation equally, and in accordance to the natural ebbing and flowing of the cycles of nature that he created, then knowledge of how to predict, control, and propagate plants and animals outside of those cycles is both mysterious and tempting knowledge indeed. It is godlike, even. But snakes are not always so reviled. In many pagan cultures, snakes represent those very same natural cycles that agrarian civilizations so giddily meddle with, cycles of birth, life, death, and rebirth. Often, they represent immortality and the healing properties innate to the natural world. According to one such myth, the Greek god of medicine, Asclepius, for example, once helped to heal a suffering serpent. In return, the ingratiated reptile slithered up his staff and licked his ears clean as she whispered to him all the secret arts of healing and medicine. From then on, he could hear clearly all the secrets of the natural world, and at one point used this very information to defy death and heal the gods themselves. Of course, this new ability to defy death was something even the gods did not fully possess, and so they perceived his knowledge as a threat to their power. This, of course, did not end well for him, but that's another story. A comparison can be drawn here between Eve and Asclepius, and I argue that their shared acceptance of and symbolic association with the serpent hints at these similarities. Both became privy to occult or hidden knowledge that allowed them to defy the natural order as prescribed by their gods. They gained the ability to liberate themselves from the yoke of ignorance and nature both. In a less favorable light, perhaps it can be said that they arrogantly assumed a godlike power over nature that they had no real claim to, saw themselves as above or beyond the natural world, and were not evolved enough to handle the responsibility that comes with such power. From a more charitable angle, we might just as easily claim that Eve and Asclepius were possessed of innocent curiosity or a faith in themselves or an open-minded compassion that then allowed them to embrace the unknown and made them receptive to the secret mysteries that govern the unseen frameworks of the cosmos. Their reward for their openness was a power that threatened the gods. Their reward was knowledge, wisdom. The Fool of Tarot is likewise associated with themes of innocence, faith, and curiosity, as well as hubris, rashness, and, well, foolishness. Another thread that connects the stories of Eve and Asclepius is the thread of faith. They are both interacting with the divine, which is tenement to interacting with faith. Faith in what? Well, what is the social convention or role of God? God can come to mean a reassurance of the validity and forethought pertaining to the sometimes seemingly random way in which our lives unfold. It is not random, we say. It is all accounted for. It is only that the scope of the divine will, the plan of the gods, is simply too vast and complicated for us to comprehend. In this way, we can recontextualize the chaos of life as having some kind of order to it, even if it is an order we cannot see. And order implies meaning. Intention. This is no small comfort for a species that seems perpetually afraid of the dark, unknown, and chaotic. If there is a master, then there is someone to whom you can beseech when things go wrong, someone more powerful than yourself or your kin. The gods do more than provide order, though. They love us, they favor us, care for us, protect us, and usually they scare the shit out of us. They intimidate us into walking the path of social righteousness for fear of divine retribution. So they punish us, they play with us, they hate us, they reject us, they bring us in, they cast us out. It is only through faith and devotion that we may be redeemed in the eyes of our gods. And this faith can buoy us across the turbulent waters of the unknown and unseen. When Eve took the apple on the suggestion of the serpent and partook of the knowledge of good and evil, she awakened the divine knowledge within herself. When Asclepius accepted and healed the serpent and used the knowledge of medicine and immortality to heal the gods and defy death, he presented himself as an equal to his makers. After all, before agriculture, God controlled when and how the harvest came. Before medicine, it was the gods who healed the sick and determined who would survive their injuries and who would succumb to death and disease. Thus, there became an alternative to a faith in and reliance on the gods. We could instead have faith in ourselves. Often, if the card appears upright, the Fool indicates that we too are eager to take the leap of faith into the unknown and reap the benefits of knowledge, wisdom, and hindsight that are sure to follow. Consciously or unconsciously, we believe in ourselves. We are ready. Reversed, we either leap prematurely or not at all. We remain safely within the garden. We do not accept or heal the serpent. We do not awaken ourselves to the unknown or our unknown power. But we cannot stay in the garden forever. Just as a child cannot be protected by the vigilant care of their mother indefinitely, eventually we must leap or we will be pushed. Hence, the steep and foreboding cliff upon which the Fool precariously stands. Their leap off the edge of the known and into the unknown is a destined and unavoidable one, whether they see it coming or not. In most monotheistic faiths, and certainly again in the Christian one, God is an all-seeing and all-powerful force. He put the forbidden tree in the garden and told Adam and Eve not to partake of its fruit, knowing full well that they would. Unless the Christian idea of free will is only the free will, the freedom to fail God and to sin, then Eve taking the apple was preordained, planned for, and destined. It was what God desired because he set the events in motion. I want to pause here to insert the idea that God can occasionally act as a symbolic stand-in for our own higher self, the aspect of our internal makeup that is, and will always be, divine and immortal, our soul, our highest possible self. That is not my understanding of how most Christians interpret their God, but I do like the symbolic implications. We push ourselves off the cliff. We take the leap. And although our consciousness, our ego, may claim contrary, we are the ones who design our destiny. We want to take the leap. We simply may not be aware that we want it. I won't take this thought too far. It does have its limits, I'm aware. I would never claim that people put themselves in harmful or painful situations because they are, on some level, asking for it. I will say, however, that material struggle and discomfort are often necessary companions to spiritual growth, fulfillment, and enlightenment. We will revisit that thought when we talk about the Hanged Man later. Anyway, according to Christian doctrine, there is one all-powerful God, and he dictates and decides everything. He made humanity in his image, or so they claim, and so he gave Eve her inherent qualities. Her openness, reflected in the very form and function of her body, was by divine design. God designed Eve to receive, create, and desire a taste of the unknown. I bring up her female body for only one reason. She is not a woman in the context that we have come to know her. She is a character, and especially she is a symbol. Of what? I'm so glad you asked. According to Hermetic tradition, there exists within us and around us multiple overlapping polarities, or opposites. The female form symbolizes the receptive polarity, while the male form symbolizes the projective polarity. All right, now this is a rather ham-handed symbol, but it makes sense insofar as a male anatomy sticks out and female anatomy is designed to receive. It's a little chunky, but it does get the point across. According to Hermetic thought, everyone, regardless of their externally manifested sex, possesses both masculine and feminine inner principles, and these forces, ideally, are then brought into balance. This is in no way a concept limited to the human experience. They would go so far as to identify the concept of male and female and, of course, intersex plants and animals, and even on the molecular level, recognizing a negatively charged electron to be the receptive principle of the positively charged proton. Then, of course, they're implying the neutral neutron. So throughout this philosophy, we have this idea of two polar extremes and the gradient or in-between space that they create as we go from one to the other. The idea that you can somehow manage these opposites within yourself and bring them to some kind of harmony or equilibrium implies this really nice fluidity. This fluidity is also reflected in astrology because the four elements are also divided so that earth and water are seen as feminine and therefore receptive, while fire and air are seen as masculine and therefore projective. Yet, chances are, within any individual, there will be an alchemic blending of all of these different elements. Regardless of our natural propensities, we're going to be a combination of all of these different forces, each one of us an intricate blend of yin and yang, positive and negative, masculine and feminine. At any rate, the story is not called Eve and the Apple. It is usually referred to as the story of Adam and Eve. And this is because the two lovers represent one psyche, the psyche of the human collective. We'll talk more about this in detail when we go over the Lover's card at some point, but for now, just know that the Fool is seen as possessed of both so-called feminine and so-called masculine energies. In fact, according to many, the Fool is entirely hermaphroditic in nature, the hermaphrodite itself being an ancient and well-used symbol of the unification and harmony between these two extremes. I rather like this take on the Fool because, as I have said, the Fool represents potential. They are the free and liberated soul, not yet incarnate in the physical world, or bound to it and its limitations, where such trivialities are distinguished and assigned weight and consequence. You may have noticed I have been using pronouns they, them in reference to the dandelion fae in the illustration, and this is why. The polarities in them are blended and balanced so perfectly, all things and possibilities can come from them in equal likeliness, so much as it might be just as accurate to say, while they have both masculine and feminine, they have neither one. Now, going back to the symbolism of the serpent. Of course, the actual biological behavior of snakes also plays a role in the symbolism we assign to them. They are low to the earth, sneaky, silent, and often deadly. Ignorance and a snake make a dangerous combination. Yet even here, we find hidden and symbolic wisdom, for, although a snake's venom may be lethal, it is by understanding and interacting with that deadly venom that, in the hands of the learned, will result in the creation of antivenom, the cure. The snake represents the hidden dangers of ignorance as well as the cure for it, wisdom. Snakes scent the air with their strangely forked tongues and thus gain a taste of knowledge, a sense of the natural world to which we simply are not privy. Snakes flow, they undulate, they wriggle and writhe. Yes, they are low to the ground, but more than that, they penetrate it. Like the goddess Persephone, they descend into the bowels of the earth and hibernate when life atop is lost to winter's grasp. Therefore, it should come as no surprise that snakes are associated with the underworld. Spiritually and symbolically, as in ghosts, ghouls, witches, the occult, whatever, but also literally, as in the dirt and junk under our topside world. This literal under the world is a foundation and wellspring of life and its ability to rebirth and reproduce itself, as much as it is a place to bury the dead. In the same way, the dead themselves are just as much our loved ones, ancestors, and guides as they are food for the worms and fertilizer for crops. Snakes shed their skin, and this shedding is a symbol for transformation and regeneration. We come from the earth feeds us, heals us, regenerates us, and when we die, we feed, heal, and regenerate the earth in return. The image of the Ouroboros, or the snake eating its own tail, is a symbol for this and other never-ending cycles and feedback loops. Like death, snakes loom in the unlit and unknown places, seldom seen until it is too late. And, much like the deep, dark, primordial ocean, and recall here please that I said both earth and water were connected by way of their receptive properties, the deep, dark womb of the earth can also come to represent the deep, dark, unexplored shadows of subconscious mind. Snakes are connected to the earth in the same way our subconscious minds are connected to the universe. In it, part of it, all around it, separate from it, and yet still inextricably connected to it. The relationship is always there, and yet difficult to describe or understand, at least difficult to understand consciously. It is both liminal and cyclical. The point is, snakes symbolize many things, and many different doctrines will feel many different ways about them, but they are consistently associated with all that which is secret, hidden, and unknown, whether it be secret wisdom or secret danger. These and more are all things yet hidden to our fool, although they will discover them in time. Like any dandelion growing in a garden and oblivious of its want for welcome, the fool in this card travels carelessly upon the path. Their eyes are closed, and so they remain consciously oblivious to both the cliff's edge upon which they stand and the serpent underfoot. Speaking of being underfoot, let's talk about feet. Feet are associated with the zodiac sign of Pisces, and Pisces is associated with both martyrs and mystics. Pisces is also a sign without border or boundary. It is one with the environment and vice versa, just as a fish is permeated by and permeates the oceanic waters in which it lives. Our feet are the parts of our bodies that connect us to the earth, our primordial mother. As we trot upon her skin, we leave pieces of ourselves behind and take with us pieces of her. This, again, is both literally and symbolically true. Our feet become dirty when we walk, picking up and absorbing bacteria and microorganisms, and the gods only know what else. So too do we leave our footprint behind, the impression of our earthly gravity, as well as skin cells, trash, broken twigs, dead bugs, whatever. Symbolically, this means that our feet represent our connection to the earth, to our path, and to the physical and psychic traces we leave behind as we continue upon it. That is to say, we leave physical and psychic impressions on our spiritual path, and what we encounter on our spiritual path likewise leaves physical and psychic impressions upon us. This process changes the path and us both, however imperceptibly. Our feet feel the path they cannot see, and they walk us down it and withstand the worst of our weight as we fumble about in darkness. Follow your feet is a saying that means something to the effect of follow your body's cues, or where you are inclined to go is where you are meant to go, or your feet know where you are meant to go, even if your heart and your head do not. That is to say, our feet can represent our instincts as much as they can represent earthly connection or intuition, and so it is that these are not mutually exclusive faculties. The fool's feet will feel the serpent before they have opened their eyes to it. This is a really fun tangent because Pisces is ruled by the planet Jupiter, which itself rules mirth, faith, miracles, goodwill, philosophy, luck, unification, abundance, growth, and expansion, among other things. Scott Cunningham, in his book The Encyclopedia of Magical Herbs, associates the dandelion with the element air and the planet Jupiter. The Fool in tarot is not typically associated with Jupiter, but it is associated with wishing and faith, specifically with taking leaps of faith and the leaper being rewarded with adventure, if not the fulfillment of the wish or dream that encouraged the act of leaping to begin with. Wishes and faith are themes both dandelions and Jupiter have in common. The dandelion's flower also lightens and expands as it matures, and its bright yellow petals transform into flighty little seed pods, which are then pushed about by the wind. Jupiter rules themes of expansion, and astrologically tends to uplift and alleviate. It is called the greater benefic because, generally speaking, it rules nice benefic things. It tends to indicate the greater good. Little kids make wishes by blowing on dandelion puffs and sending them out into the wind, and Jupiter is the planet that bestows blessings and grants wishes. Some traditions, such as Vedic astrology, also associate the colors yellow, gold, and white with Jupiter, and dandelions are yellow and then turn white. I will take the time to say, however, that other astrological sources associate Jupiter with colors like azure and indigo and gold. Meanwhile, almost all of the sources that I've read associate the sun with colors like yellow, orange, red, and white, or a bright red anyways. Darker reds are usually reserved for Mars. So do with that information as you like. To those interested, I will take a moment to add here also that the dandelion's shoes are a yellow-gold color because gold represents enlightenment, and yellow represents joy, clarity, and the element air. The fool's feet are as enlightened as their mind. The fool walks on air, so to speak, unburdened and unlimited. On some deep, hidden level, their knowing permeates every level of their being, from their golden flower crown to their golden shoes. In any event, I suspect these factors may also be a part of Cunningham's logic, or the logic of whatever source from which he pulled the association. In any rate, almost every source that I've read that has given the dandelion plant an elemental association has given it to the element air. With Cunningham on this front, I definitely agree. Why I associate the dandelion plant with the Fool card in particular is due partly to the aforementioned reasoning, but also because each seed carried by the wind is a new adventure waiting to happen. It is potential, plain and simple, and potential is a huge part of what the Fool represents. Maybe the gentle breeze will carry those seeds over into new open fields of uncharted territory, with rich soil and enough room to expand endlessly. Maybe those seeds will simply attach themselves to a kid's coat as they walk by, and then be sucked up by their mother's vacuum when it finds its way onto the carpet. The outcome does not really matter at this point. The seeds are taking that leap of faith anyway. The young dandelion fay in the illustration plucks an elder dandelion tuft from the patch and holds it between their thumb and forefinger as the end of one dissolves into many new beginnings. They either do not know or do not care that they hold in their hands a foreshadowing omen of their own journey's conclusion. And here another wisdom the Fool teaches. Every new beginning implies its ending. I want to readdress color. Color is important, color is symbolic. Color affects our psychology and embeds itself into our emotional frameworks. As above, so below. What affects the cosmos affects us. What affects us affects the cosmos. We feel within us what is felt outside of us. All things are connected, linked sympathetically with and to each other. This philosophy is what yields the law of correspondence. Things operating on the same sympathetic wavelength are related to each other and relate with each other. Thus, by affecting, evoking, or interacting with one aspect upon the chain of correspondence, we may affect, evoke, or interact with any of the others on that same chain. That specific chain, then, or thread, is woven in and around countless others to create the tapestry of the cosmos. Still, those that correspond to each other tend to manifest certain external similarities in accordance to their similar internal natures, as dictated or at least indicated by the heavens, the gods, the planetary spheres, what have you. Color is one such correspondence. The fay's petals and shoes are yellow because, yes, dandelion flowers are yellow, but those colors also symbolize the Fool's intuitive, instinctual inclination to walk the path of enlightenment. Jupiter is associated with yellow, and Jupiter is also associated with the learned and enlightened, the monks, prophets, and sages. The sun likewise is associated with yellow, and the sun is associated with kings, people of sovereignty, of regality, nobility, and estate. So just what is it that prophets and the learned and kings and monarchs have in common, as indicated through their shared correspondence of color yellow? Well, both are interacting favorably with the divine. For the king, it is the divine that grants him the right to rule, his right to purpose and confidence. For the sage, it is the divine that teaches him the arts of wisdom, of patience, and enlightenment. Both of these things have value, and things of value are represented by gold. Both of these come with a certain type of clarity. For the king, the clarity of self, the clarity of purpose, the clarity of power, and for the learned, the clarity of soul, the clarity of psyche, the clarity of wisdom. And clarity is associated with the color yellow. We'll circle back to the Fool's relationship with the sun, which is a very common icon and symbol seen on their card. But for now, let's conclude the segment on color by also mentioning that the fay's body is green because, yes, the stem of the flower is green in nature, but also because symbolically, green represents growth and newness. Green represents natural life, earth, abundance, prosperity, health, and sickness, which is related to health and the natural world. The Fool's body is green because they are growing and connected instinctually to nature and her natural cycles. The Fool is new and inexperienced, but as indicated by yellow and gold, clarity is on the horizon. They will not remain inexperienced for long. Let's talk about some other correspondences associated with the tarot card, the Fool. The Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, the so-called secret society in Victorian England, to which the creators of the Rider-Waite-Smith style and Thoth style tarot decks belonged, originally associated their version of the tarot Fool with the quintessential properties of the element air, and with the Greek concept of ether. Ether, or aether itself, has a long and complicated symbolic, mythological, alchemic, and scientific history. In the contexts of which I am most familiar, ether or ether often refers to something like air or atmosphere or spirit and indicates the invisible substance which connects and permeates through all things, just as the atmosphere on the whole is invisible and yet omnipresent. Okay, so we need to talk a bit about science history, and I'm about to cite Wikipedia because I am not an expert in this field by any stretch of the imagination. Still, I do think it provides some interesting context, so forgive me. But anyway, according to Wikipedia, the history of ether as a scientific concept looks something like this. Robert Flood, astrologer, philosopher, and mathematician, stated that ether was, quote, subtler than light, and apparently cited the 3rd century founder of Neoplatonism, Plutus, for his understanding of ether as both penetrative and non-material. Later, in 1687, ether was cited in Sir Isaac Newton's Philosophiae Naturalis Principia Mathematica, sorry, I don't speak Latin, but you get it, principles of math, as an intervening medium that, quote, flows continuously downward towards the Earth's surface and is partially absorbed and partially diffused. This circulation of ether is what he associated the force of gravity with to help him explain the action of gravity in non-mechanical function or fashion. Later still, Einstein would apparently note that, although his scientific model pretty much made his predecessor's theories of ether obsolete, his model itself might still be thought of as a kind of ether, as it implied that, quote, the empty spaces between objects had its own physical properties. Scientific theories of the role and validity of ether seem to have varied widely in terms of acceptance, meaning, and understanding, and thus the concepts of ether have undergone numerous transformations as it has come into and out of scientific fashion throughout the ages. For example, quantum physicists are reconsidering the concepts of ether, and some have even tried to apply it to dark matter. So, what was ether originally? As far as I can tell, it was a god, of course, a symbol for a specific quality of the divine, more specifically. In Homeric Greek, ether means pure, fresh air, or clear sky. Mythologically speaking, ether is one of the Greek gods born of Nyx, the primordial goddess of night, and Iberus, the god of darkness and gloom. Yet here he personifies the bright upper sky specifically. There is no light without darkness, I suppose, so it would make sense to assume that light was birthed from the dark. In accordance with this, much of ether's early role in alchemic thought was to explore and explain the apparent luminescence of the sky. It was different than air and different than light, yet continued, or at least appeared to partake some of each of these and other natural aspects. The spirit or soul is also often conceptualized as having some kind of ethereal or intrinsic brightness or glow. Ether is linked to both brightness, lightness, and the soul. In astrology, all the planetary spheres and the 4 elements share certain correspondences, such as partaking of feminine or masculine natures, hot, dry, wet, or cold natures, etc. But not ether. It was neither wet nor dry, nor hot nor cold, neither male nor female. It is something, not quite anything, and so perhaps kind of everything. This is the thought behind the Fool's association with the idea of ether in the tarot. The Fool also represents, quote, the spaces in between. This is reflected by its numerological value of 0, the non-number, the placeholder, the empty space from which everything comes out of and to which everything must return, the cosmic egg, the original potential. The space between real and imaginary, cause and effect. The Fool is the in-between. I believe it was the late Rachel Pollack who first said, quote, the Fool is the leap of faith required to get from any one card to the next. Indeed, just as Einstein conceptualized ether as, quote, the empty spaces between objects that has its own physical properties, so too might we conceptualize the Fool as the empty space or leaps of faith between the cards that nevertheless has its own spiritual properties. Here's a fun thing to note. The glyph that Isaac Newton used for ether looks suspiciously similar to the astrological glyph used for the modern planet Uranus. It is virtually exactly the same, except without the circle at the end. This is hilarious in my opinion, because after the discovery of Uranus and the outer planets, the Fool's astrological association would shift from air and ether to Uranus. So let's talk about Uranus. The planet Uranus takes its name from the Greek sky father birthed by his consort Gaia, who he coupled with to begin the lineage of the gods. Uranus is an interesting planet for a few scientific reasons. First, it was the first planet to be discovered by way of technological innovation, that is, the telescope. According to science.nasa.gov, it is also, quote, the only planet whose equator is nearly at a right angle to its orbit, in other words, on its side. The article goes on to say that this tilt is suspected to be a result of a collision with an Earth-sized object long ago. I want to take a minute to just point out that a Gaia-sized planet apparently collided with Uranus, as lovers perhaps collide, leaving one radically and permanently changed forever. It's so funny. Like, is this just a synchronistic matchup to mythology, or were they just like super thorough about researching and picking the best suited mythical naming thing for this reference? I mean, it's honestly like you can't write this stuff. It's perfect. Anyway, this collision is the reason for the extreme weather conditions of this planet. You see, about a quarter of each so-called Uranian year, quote, the sun shines directly over each pole, plunging the other half of the planet into a 21-year-long dark winter. Again, revisiting themes of death, rebirth, polar opposites, and extremes. Traditional astrologers do not seem to think very highly of the outer planets Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. Yes, okay, I know, Pluto is not a planet, but whatever, that's not the point, we'll talk about it later. Anyway, modern astrologers, on the other hand, seem to hold a great love for the outer planets. I tend to side with traditional astrologers insofar as it pertains to the usefulness of the outer planets more often than not, but I'm a maximalist, so I don't discount them either. Their orbits take such a long time, however, that they tend to be more generational in their astrological applications and effects, and therefore seem better suited for the birth charts of countries than individual people. However, when it comes to the new tarot association of Uranus and the Fool, well, I like this quite a bit. For one, Uranus is the planet of innovation, technological advancement, unpredictability, eccentricity, shake-ups and wake-ups, as Teresa Reed the Tarot Lady says, uncharted territories, revolutionary thoughts, ideas, breakthroughs, etc. So you get the idea. It's weird, it's erratic, and its effects are long-term. Astrologers on the New Agey side of things even go so far as to associate Uranus with human progress, and some go further and pair it with the concept of the Akashic Records. Akashic Records? Sorry if I'm not saying that correctly. Or the mystical pool or library containing all knowledge of human experience, including the past, present, and future, and everything in between. To be honest, I do not know much about the Akashic Records, except that I am vaguely intrigued by the concept in general. However, I have seen some people use the term in ways that, while they were not exactly nefarious, did sound a bit like a dog whistle of some kind. I don't really want to get into it, and there's no shade on that if that's your jam, but just know that my introduction to it has put me a bit on edge, and I've been very cautious in my exploration of this concept ever since. If you have any personal experience with this concept, if you have any intimate understanding or personal knowledge or experience with this concept, please let me know in the comments. I would love to learn from you. Anyway, one thing I learned from a Reddit post of all things was that there is some kind of link proposed between the concept of the Akashic Records and ether, which is fun because both are correspondences of the Fool. So this works for me. Well, alright, so here's how it breaks down. Uranus rules radical and revolutionary change. The Fool leaps into the unknown, consequences be damned. The Fool is open, curious, new, brave, and, yes, innovative. Uranus rules science and innovation, technology, the very tools humankind has created to study the microcosm and macrocosm of the cosmos, to sate his natural Eve-born curiosity and explore the unknown. Uranus rules unpredictability, and the Fool is all about spontaneity, endless potential, things that are difficult, if not impossible, to predict. The two make a cute pair, don't you think? Another symbol used to denote the planet Uranus, besides the one that looks like the capital H with the line down the center and the little circle at the end of it, is a combination of the alchemic symbol for the sun with the spear of Mars pointed upwards at the top. According to science.nasa.gov, the symbol for Uranus is represented by the combined devices indicating the sun plus the spear of Mars, as Uranus was the personification of heaven in Greek mythology, dominated by the light of the sun and the power of Mars. You might notice that another symbolic motif that appears in the Fool's Tarot card is the bright and cheerful sun. The sun in astrology rules sovereignty over self and other, consciousness, ego, purpose, health, glory, renown, among other things. I have heard it said, although I can recall not where, that where the sun is in our natal charts represents the way we are meant to bring light into the world and illuminate the path for others. The sun brings clarity, certainty, nobility, authority. It is also often used as a symbol for enlightenment. And again, we see that gold and yellow are both correspondences of the sun as well as symbols for clarity and enlightenment. Dandelions thrive in the sun. They grow without permission, as though their right to invade your garden was by the gods given. Maybe it was. Dandelion seeds leap into the air on a breeze and land wherever they land, conquer and thrive. With all the strength of the battle-hungry war god Mars, they break through cement barriers, concrete, stone, as confident as any king, and assert themselves and their right to live and fulfill their purpose, however humble their purpose may appear to us. Some of these concepts at this point may appear to coincide more with the tarot card like the Emperor or the Tower than the Fool, which is often portrayed as childlike and innocent. This would be an astute and accurate observation, but I'd like to add that the Fool, as being none of these cards, is also all of these cards. The Fool has the potential to turn into the Emperor as easily as they do the potential to turn into the Lovers, or the Hierophant, the High Priestess, the Magician, the Two of Swords, the Three of Wands. Again, as Rachel Pollack stated, the Fool is the leap of faith from any card to any other card. When you work with the tarot, you shuffle it, you pull it from its chronological order, and anything might appear. And in that liminal space before the answer has revealed itself, the Fool's spirit can be felt. Just as the Fool implies all of the other tarot cards, so too does the Fool imply all of the other elements. Although it is traditionally regarded as corresponding to the element air, it is important to recall that its truer association is not quite that of air, but that of ether. However, I think an argument can be made that if you look at how the element air interacts with the natural world, you will see it is somewhat omnipresent. For example, air feeds the flame. Oxygen molecules are found as components in water. The mountains penetrate the air above, and of course we know that air pockets can be found in crystal structures below. This is also reflected visually in the symbolism you see on the card. The mountains behind the Fool represent the element earth. They also symbolize the material obstacles that the Fool will eventually come to experience. Although they know no limitation at the moment, this is one of the first things they will encounter. Below the mountains is a river, moving water, of course representing the element water, and the Suit of Cups, which the Fool will eventually interact with as well. The heat of the sun represents fire, and as we've previously mentioned, the breeze that carries the dandelion tufts is the air. The Fool is all of these things because it is not yet any of these things. Further symbolizing this is the golden ribbon of enlightenment, which can be seen weaving all around the Fool. This ribbon takes the form of a treble clef, and this is intentional. One of my favorite songs, ESP by Nerd, has a line in one of its verses that reads, "Did you ever realize that the universe just means one song? Your soul knew it all along. You were dancing when you were born." I found this to be incredibly profound when I first heard it. I had never considered the word universe, uni as in one and verse as in song. In many metaphysical doctrines, everything that is to be or has been is composed of various degrees of vibration. To create song is to utilize the human's natural means to manipulate, create, and interact with this vibration. The amazing thing about music is its ability to penetrate through the body, through the mind, through the heart, and move the soul. It is an amazing example of magic that we routinely take for granted. We spoke before of the Fool's connection to the soul. I believe the nature of the Fool is the nature of the unadulterated soul, before it learns to fear and suffer and analyze and contemplate. The Fool's soul is pure because it is whole and complete unto itself. It exists for the sake of existence, and there may be no nobler pursuit than that. Many medical experts claim that dandelion flowers possess antioxidant properties that can aid in improving the immune system and detoxifying the body. Another way to say detoxification is perhaps purification. The dandelion is pure, Because of the purity innate to its nature, its flower in the hands of the learned can help purify our earthly bodies as well. One of the more well-known and well-loved meanings of the Fool card in tarot is its ability to represent the divine potential each one of us possesses. Yet, in many ways, the wisdom of the Fool is inextricably linked to ignorance. It is their lack of knowing that creates the open space within which knowledge is allowed to grow and wisdom allowed to thrive. Their nothingness creates space for everything. They are the space between spaces, the unknown between the known. The Fool represents the arms open in which the serpent of the arcane is held, healed, and heated. So that's all for my first episode on the Children of Ostara Fool card. I hope to be doing these monthly on Patreon, although I think I'll probably delay the YouTube upload quite a bit because I'm a little bit nervous. I'm kind of scared to be on YouTube. When I was growing up, YouTube comments were notoriously mean. I think a lot of platforms now have that problem, but I don't know. Anyways, I hope that you enjoyed this. I hope that you love it. And if you, I don't know, thought any kind of way, then maybe consider leaving a comment or a like or sharing with your friends. And please consider following me on Patreon. I plan to post a lot of exclusive content there. I may even do little one-off things or previews of like speed paints and stuff like that I won't be posting anywhere else. So definitely, just consider it. So thanks so much, and I hope to talk to you guys again soon.